Black people were always a minority in Africa in historical times. We tend to think now of Africa as being a country of black people, a continent full of black people. It's not true. Now, sometimes people think that South Africa is a black nation, that it belongs to black people. It's not true. The black people, the Bantu, hadn't reached there when the white people arrived in the 17th century. At that time, the Khoisan, the bush people, were living there, who were white people, indigenous Africans. And so the Bantu and the white settlers both exterminated the Khoisan.
Hi guys, welcome back to our channel. In case you're new here, my name is Maren
and I'm Maureen.
Yeah, so in today's episode you're going to be reacting to a video of a white man who claims pretty much that white people were the original inhabitants of Africa. But before we get to say much, let's just watch this video and then we'll come back and talk about it. Remember, if you have anything to say, you can leave it on the comment section, and we are looking forward to seeing what you have to say. Let's watch.
Black people were always a minority in Africa in historical times. We tend to think now of Africa as being a country of black people, a continent full of black people. It's not true. At one time, there were three different types of people living in Africa. There were the Berbers, who lived in the Sahara before it became a desert. They were white people, and they lived in North Africa. In the south, there were the Khoisan, what sometimes known as the bush people. Yeah. They lived over most of Africa, right as far north as Uganda, Kenya, Mozambique, Zimbabwe, South Africa. There weren't any black people living there. There were only the Khoisan people living there.
So were they white, these Bushmen?
They were white people. They were white people.
So guys, let's just hit pause and hear what this guy has to say. And there's a lot of misinformation in this video, and this is where we normally say, if you let a white person tell you the history of black people, then they're going to tell it as they want it to be told. And this is the danger of the upcoming generation, because history, pretty much, we know, has been rewritten and has been distorted. But let's just look at the history of the North African Berbers and the North African people. As we normally say, and as a lot of you know, North Africa was the doorway to Africa, right? Meaning, when the white people were coming to colonize Africa, where were they coming in from? North Africa, West Africa, and these were the coastal lines that were used for an entry point in Africa. But this is not just the only crazy thing this guy is saying. Let's continue watching this video and then we come back and talk about it.
North African Imazis have brown and dark skin complexion like other East and West Africans. Some look phenotypically Negroid. Imazis say the pale or white Imazis don't even speak or write the original Tamajite dialect. White Berbers learn from the original blacks their language. They never learn the written script, which is why the black Imazis are the only ones who kept the original writing scripts hidden from white Berbers who can't understand it. It's not as pure, but it separates the originals from the whites. You will not find Riffian dialect written in ancient Old Tifina. They came and learned it under the black Amazigh who worshipped Ammon deity with them in Siwi, in ancient West Libya at Kemet. The pale-skinned Imazis are population replacement racism. Their mtDNA belongs to Mamluks, Kurds, Turks, Albanians, Balkans, Boers, Greeks, Circassia, Spain, pale European slaves, etc.
These were the original humans. These were the first Homo sapiens that came into Europe. They're still living on reservations in places like Botswana. About 2,500 years ago, a group of black people called the Bantu, who were living in West Africa, started to expand outward. They started farming, and they began to expand outward into the rest of Africa. And they conquered or exterminated everyone that came into their path, or enslaved them if there were any survivors. So they enslaved the pygmies. They killed all the Khoisan, except for a few of them that they used as slaves. And it was the Bantu that conquered Africa. That's why we think of Africa as being a nation where black people live.
But it's not always been the case.
No, of course not.
Okay, I mean, even that, I'll be honest, I didn't know that, you know. I mean, I'm showing my ignorance, but I guess if I'm saying that, there's many people who have also had that sort of airbrushed out of their understanding. I'm sure. So I'm just sort of, I'm going to be open with my ignorance, but, you know, I'm guessing this is an opportunity for us to all learn now.
The Bantu spread out through Africa, and by the 16th or 17th century, they were approaching South Africa. Now, sometimes people think that South Africa is a black nation, that it belonged to black people. It's not true. The black people, the Bantu, hadn't reached there when the white people arrived in the 17th century. At that time, the Khoisan, the bush people, were living there, who were white people, indigenous Africans. And so the Bantu and the white settlers both exterminated the Khoisan.
So guys, essentially what this white guy is saying is that the Bantus were not the original occupants of South Africa, and what he's trying to say is that when the white people migrated to South Africa,
they found a very bare land that was ripe for the taking, and no African was anywhere in the vicinity when they settled in South Africa. And by that, he means that white people rightfully own South Africa. And this is the type of problem you have when you give this type of people an inch, they walk a mile to take what is not theirs.
You know how colonization worked was that white people were looking to conquer any black nation that was in existence, and if indeed, and he was trying to purport that the Khoisans were originally white people. And you guys, if you look, anybody who has a phenotypically gene that has, you know, that they are melanated, those people are considered black. And when you look at Khoisans, there's no evidence to prove that they were Caucasians. Even something that you can see with your eyes, someone is trying to debate, all right, to make the argument correct.
And you know what is very funny about the statements this old man is making is that he's an old man, he should know better. But I think him, his generation, and even the young white people right now, they've read so much history that is wrong history, you know. In order for white people to be okay with the atrocities they committed in Africa, they had to make themselves think whatever they were doing was right. And by that, they whitewashed the history, the true history of Africa. Because if you meet any African who has the true history, they will tell you Bantus were being pushed up, the ones who were at least in South Africa, were being pushed up by white settlers who were coming to grab land in South Africa. And they were coming with rifles. Africans had nothing but spears and rocks to fight with. Would you stay and be, you know, unalive by a very fast bullet that you had never seen in your entire life?
Right. And you guys, you know, you have to wonder and you have to ask yourself, why is this narrative being pushed right now? Because we are in the era of, you know, right now this scramble of Africa going on. China wants a piece of Africa, Russia wants a piece of Africa, America wants a piece of Africa, right?
UAE has started buying up big pieces of Africa,
right? So, and the other day there was that guy who used to be an American military, Eric Prince, who was talking about let's recolonize Africa. And in his own sentiments, why he was saying that they need to recolonize Africa, he was feeling like Africa, we are not capable enough to lead ourselves.
And you know very well the reason why they want to come and recolonize Africa is not out of the goodness of their heart to help Africans, but rather to grab up for themselves the minerals and natural resources that are here in Africa.
Yeah, it's quite sad. If you look at what is happening in Congo, it's very, very sad. That country has never experienced peace, and they'll never experience peace because, as it is, Congo is the only country right now that is very, very rich. Actually, it's the #1 country that is very, very rich in cobalt. And as we know, cobalt is being used in the world right now at huge numbers. It's being used to manufacture vehicles. Cobalt is being used to manufacture
anything
phones,
electric
in short.
And most African people, citizens from different countries, would ask, why don't African leaders team up together, go and help Congo deliver itself from people who have grips on it, and fight the MI6 that is causing trouble in Congo? My answer would be, much like your guess, these African leaders, all of them are pretty much compromised.
Right. Another thing I have to mention, that this is not my first time hearing what this white man is saying. The talks of Bantus having moved down from West Africa to South Africa and finding white settlers there, white settlers who already
How did white settlers come to Africa, a predominantly black society, you know,
and not find any
black people in the area they settled? Black people were everywhere, even in America. And mind you, even the first white person in America who claimed to have discovered America,
Columbus.
by his own confession, he said he found black people in America.
Native Americans there.
From what I know, white people came from the mountains in Russia.
The Caucasus Mountains.
If anything, whatever they should be claiming right now, they should shut up and claim the mountains in Russia.
But
nowhere else in the world.
If Putin will allow them.
Putin doesn't. Anyway, okay, let's move on from that.
Yeah, so what I wanted to say is, it's not the first time I'm hearing the guys talk about Bantus coming from West Africa and coming down to South Africa and finding white settlers. That, South Africa is literally the poster child of what happened in the colonial era, and predominantly during the apartheid, the things that black South Africans had to go through.
And I think South Africa still is the literal evidence of what of white presence in Africa and the colonization. It is the literal evidence.
And you ask yourself, there's a video we posted about interviews or debate from the colonial eras, how kids in the colonial eras used to debate and what they used to think. And there's that white girl called Susan, and she really was defending her beliefs and what she was talking about, because it's what she was taught in school, and she was talking about the same thing this guy is saying.
And this just goes to show when these white colonizers and their forefathers, when they were doing all these things, not only in Africa but in America, they rewrote history in a way that would favor them, so that their kids wouldn't have to grow up seeing the type of monsters they were. Instead, their kids grew up seeing the type of monsters Africans were.
Yeah, and the dangers of rewriting history in this manner, because when you start singing it enough, people are going to believe it.
And even I thought for a minute that was true, and then I shook my head like, Africa was for Africans, not white people.
So how do you claim a continent that really carries the most number of black people, Africans, right? How do you start claiming that Africans, black people are the invaders in that continent, and that Africa truly belongs to white people? The problem about selling this kind of narrative, I say it's dangerous. And why do I say this? This puts a target on black people's backs. And why am I saying that? Because the generation of white children who are going to grow up
they truly believe they're entitled to being
exactly. They will believe that we black people invaded their continent and chased them away, when it's the other way around. Because
it's the same thing they did in United States, even though right now, okay, there are a good number of white people in America, but there's also a good number of black people. They tried, finishing indigenous people of America. I don't know if they succeeded.
No,
guys, you can tell us. This is the same narrative they sold in America, and they disregarded the fact before Columbus arrived in America, So this is the same narrative they sold in America enough times and white supremacy rose up. And right now you find a foolish, stupid white person hunting down and killing black people because they believe America is theirs. So these are the very same people who are starting to, push this agenda of Africa being for Americans. It even sounds funny.
Yeah, you guys. And the funny thing is that there are people who actually believe this narrative, and those kids who are studying with this kind of history, they're going to grow up and believe, they'll come to Africa with that entitlement that Africa was
their continent.
Africa belongs to them. And this is why we normally emphasize the importance of
teaching your children the right history, especially if you're black people anywhere in the world. Just please try and pass down the knowledge on your children, because the ignorant generation, when you grow up without knowing these bits and pieces of the puzzle, you'll easily believe that truly we are infringing on white people by living in Africa.
Yeah, and they normally say for history not to repeat itself, for you to be able to
anticipate future movements of history, you must know what happened in
history. And that knowledge is what right now we are being denied, because even in Kenya, there's a lot of things that you actually have to dig deep for you to know what really happened in the colonial days. Those are the kind of things that that are not in our African textbook, or rather, let me say Kenya. And I emphasize on this: we need to teach the right history in order to avoid some certain things happening in future. And let me tell you right now, much as there's wars going on around other continents, Russia and the other country we can't mention in the same sentence because of YouTube community guidelines. What is happening with Palestine and what is happening with Israel? There are people who can't even tell the true history between Israel and Palestine.
But those who know, But those who know who are the invaders in that land. And that is the very same thing. This kind of people are trying to push that agenda in Kenya. And that's why they say, Africans, please wake up and stop selling your land to these people. Because
you're welcoming
that is how they come to claim a piece of land that is not theirs.
Do you believe, the biggest question we normally ask is, do you believe that recolonization might take place in Africa?
It starts with bits and pieces. This time, if at all it would take place, it wouldn't, of course, be in the same fashion it did years back, It will be in a different way. First, they'll start taking up fertile lands, like the way right now Kenya is just messed up. Anyway, they'll start by controlling the food, and then they control the finances, they control, and once they've gained that foothold, they'll be able to tell you where to be, what to do, and how to live your life. That is another form of recolonization.
Yeah, because when the thing between Russia and Ukraine was starting, when we normally say this lightly until it wasn't such a light topic.
Yes.
When Russia wanted to invade, the other country, we were like, no, it can never happen. I mean, we live in the 21st century. Who does that? And then Ukraine wouldn't let them do that, and leave alone Ukraine. America would, but back then we never, we used to think, America was all big that brother, the savior they like to portray they are.
America is messing up the world. You wonder when will it be there, but that time is coming soon. Everybody knows that. It's not. I'm not saying things out of my head.
It's just something Russia has their eyes on.
Yeah, and
the world right now, the superpower countries, there's something going on there, and there's some shift that's about to change.
And the saddest part about this is still these palm-colored people who are fighting for I don't know what, And once they're fighting up there, even Africa will feel its impact, because Putin has promised to land one big atomic bomb on Biden's lap. And once he does that, the whole world will be affected. Like, you remember Hiroshima and how big it was?
Oh, Lord.
Imagine Hiroshima times, I don't know how, even Northern Africa, they will feel the impact once Biden is...
People
guys, please let us know what you think about this episode, because if we keep talking, we'll talk until tomorrow. So let us know what you think about this episode, and if you're new to this channel and you have not subscribed, consider subscribing to our channel, and we'll see you on our next episode.